When I was very young, I went to this picnic thing that my family would go to in Ohio. And there was a drummer that played in this polka band. And I just happened to be one day, I was able to sit up on a railing. He was in a corner of this area. And I looked down and saw him playing drums. And I was fascinated. Just at seeing his feet and the hands and everything moving. And I was 7 years old. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to play drums. As far as my technique, I think that came from literally watching Johnny Carson's show. Because Ed Shaughnessy, I used to admire his, he'd go up for a cymbal and he had this, it whipped. I mean, his wrists were so fluid, and I tried to emulate that. John Bonham was a big deal to me. He just, he just has a way. I mean, people still swear by him, and a lot of what he did was very simple, but he just had the sound, was immediately recognizable, and even though people, I've heard of people that mic up kits exactly like John Bonham did, and they still don't sound like him because it was coming from here. It wasn't coming from the mics put on the drums. He was doing it. It was a big deal. Just the whole thing. Led Zeppelin, as a band, influenced me a lot. And the Beatles taught me how to sing harmony, singing background. I mean, because, you can hear it. It's just the guitar, drums and stuff going on, especially the early stuff, and then voices. And you can kind of hear how they structured their harmonies, and in a lot of ways that helped me to learn how to sing harmony and what it meant when you sang harmony. And a lot of people might not understand that, but because I really wanted to sing as well as be a good musician. I wanted to be able to sing and write songs and the whole thing, just do the whole thing. And that's what I like about Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles. They wrote their songs, they performed them, they recorded them. When I moved to LA, I started meeting people, and you meet different people, and musicians, friends, and through just networking, I guess, a better way to put it. And the bass player that was playing with John Parr, who was Rick Phillips, who was in Bad English and used to be in the Babies. He and I became friends. And when we played in John Parr together, when we left, we heard about Belinda Carlisle looking for a band. And so we thought, hey, let's get a couple guys together. So we got a couple other, a guitar player and a keyboard player, keyboard player is Brett Tuggle, who now plays with David Lee Roth. And the guitar player was Tim Pierce, who played with Rick Springfield. And so we were all buddies. We all knew each other, and so we got together and put together this little band, and we went down and auditioned for Belinda as a band. So we went down and we pretty much knew the music like that. I mean, they just went, okay, great, you guys want the gig. So there were a lot of people auditioned, but we got it. I think most because we were just so prepared. All I did with Ted Nugent was I did an album, which was If You Can't Lick 'Em, Lick 'Em. Album. It was the last solo album he made before Damn Yankees came about. If you listen to that album, you can kind of tell it's not real drums. Sorry to get anybody dismayed, but what it is me playing on pads and then overdubbing cymbals. It was when everybody was doing all that, at the time. Very disappointing. I just want to say, why don't you just play? Let's just play. This is rock and roll. The Ted Nugent album was me playing on pads into a sequencer, and then they would change things slightly. Like if they didn't necessarily like a fill or a snare hit, they'd pull it out. So it's me, but it's not, for all intents and purposes. I created the feel and like where the kick drum would land and so on and so forth, but it was futzed with quite a bit. The cymbals are all mine, though. They couldn't touch those. That's You know, if anybody out there has ever done where you overdub all the cymbals, it's so bizarre. I mean, it's just a bizarre thing. I don't wish it on anybody. Robert Plant had never heard of me. He had known me from Adam. But I was recommended really highly to him from Herbie, my manager, and he knew Robert's manager, Bill Kirbishley. So they called me up, and believe me, I'm talking about it like it's a real normal thing to happen, but it's not a normal thing to happen to have somebody call you and say, you got to be in Chicago now to audition for Robert Plant. anybody would go, what, what? And that's exactly what I did. I went, what, are you, what, me? Are you sure? I was completely freaked out, but I thought, well, what the heck, you know, go for it. And it was one of those things, even then I thought, it won't happen, but I'll try. What the heck, you know? So I went, and I found myself in Chicago, and all the way on the plane, I'm listening to the tapes and wearing out the batteries on the songs, you know. And the Zeppelin stuff I wasn't worried about, because I pretty much lived and breathed Led Zeppelin since they came out. But it was the solo stuff that I really had to kind of get down. And I went in and played with them for about 40 minutes with the band, and they offered me the gig, and that's it. I started. Like 3 days later, I was doing shows. They had 3 days to learn the show. I got in Mr. Big indirectly because of this Belinda Carlisle gig. Because the keyboard player in Belinda Carlisle is Brett Tuggle, who eventually ended up in David Lee Roth Band. Well, when Billy left David Lee Roth Band, Brett told him, if you put in a band together, you should call Pat. There's this guy I know, Pat Torpey, and he plays drums, he sings, and so Billy said, oh, okay, wrote my number down. I was very close to the NAMM show. It was the NAMM show at the beginning of 1988, and that was, Billy had just left right at the end of '87 there. And I met Billy at the NAMM show because I was hanging around with Brett, and I knew Greg Bissonette a little bit. So Greg kind of told Billy, hey, if you put a band together, you should call Pat. And just some buddies, you know, saying, hey, call Pat, call Pat. And so I met Billy, and we talked a little bit, and we got on immediately. We kind of became fast friends. And a couple months later, he called me, and I went over to his place in North Hollywood, and we hung out a little bit, and he played me some music of some stuff that he wanted to do, and he didn't have a singer or a guitar player yet. And he said, well, I'm, you know, trying to find a singer, because to me that's important. I got to find a singer first. I mean, if we don't find a singer, nothing happens. So I just wanted to call you and tell you what's going on, and I'll call you. So Billy called me, and I was playing with the Knack at the time, and I went down and played with them because it started out, you know, I thought, well, I'll check it out, you know. I mean, the future looks pretty bright. It's Billy, and he told me he'd found Eric and Paul, and I didn't know Paul, but I'd heard of Eric. And they had management, I had all this stuff going for them, and I just kind of said, wow, you know, I think I'm gonna join that thing. Making a Mr. Big record just is us getting together, Paul and Billy and I get together in a room, and we talk about, well, what kind of song do we like? What kind of this do we like? And we'll start working on feels and different things. And this is only part of it. Not all the songs come from this way. Sometimes Paul will come in and have a song completely written, like Green Tinted 60s Mind, which is a song from Lean Into It. He wrote that song, had it all done, did it all himself. But there's a lot of songs that aren't like that. They start with a riff or a feel or so on and so forth, and we'll put it on a ghetto blaster, a little Sanyo ghetto blaster. There's a little plug for Sanyo there. And we put on a ghetto blaster. We send it up to Eric, up in San Francisco. Eric lives in San Francisco. And he listens to what we call them sniglets, you know, for lack of a better way to call it. Yeah, listen to these little sniglets of weird music and different ideas. And then he's kind of like Eric's really good at organizing things and making it work. And so we'll get together and we'll rehearse the songs up to where we can play them live before we go in the studio, including background vocals, everything. Now, that doesn't mean things won't change when we record, but what it means is we can play the songs, because we don't want to make this monstrosity, record it, and then how in the heck are we going to play this thing, you know? So we'll play the songs. We'll actually get in there and play them, sing them, do the whole thing, and then we'll go in and record. And it's a pretty quick process. We do the work outside the studio, so when we go in the studio, what we're basically doing is capturing the band live.